This week, I watched the Goodbye Michael episode from The Office, and while it's always fun to see characters knitting on screen while you're knitting as well, it had me wondering, could Phyllis really make these gloves in one day? And was Michael being unreasonable? And would my gloves meet a better fate than Phyllis's? I had to find out for myself. Phyllis works a job where she's not always on, so it's not impossible that she would have had time to knit these over the course of a day. She's also an experienced knitter, as we see her give Michael a knit oven mitt in season 1, so she's been knitting for at least 7 years. Phyllis is knitting in the round, and she's knitting cup to finger. In my stash, I have this yarn. It's Stylecraft Special Aran in the colour Burgundy. It's an acrylic wool, so it wouldn't have to be
hand wash without water, wring dry gently, and use a hairdryer when cool.
I only have the one ball, so we'll see how this goes. I've never knit a mitten before. I'm not really a mitten person, but I found a pattern on Drops Design and got started. I know just by looking at this pattern that these aren't going to fit me. Phyllis was making man-size mittens and I do not have man-size hands. I decreased the number of cast-on stitches. While Phyllis knit these in work, my workplace is not so lenient, so I cast on at lunchtime. These gloves have a very long ribbing for the folded over cuffs, but her gloves don't have this, so I shortened the rib. Once I had a cuff I was happy with, I started the stocking stitch part of the glove and continued to the point where I wanted the thumb gusset to start. I started making my thumb increases the way the pattern suggested by putting a yarn over on each side of the stitch marker and twisted knitting into the yarn overs on the next round, but this was leaving some huge holes in my thumb, so it was frog time. This time I increased by picking up stitches on either side of the stitch marker, left and right. I continued for 6 rows until the glove reached the part of my thumb that connects to the hand. I placed the increased stitches onto some waste yarn and I fixed all the stitches that I dropped. This will lead to some issues later, but for now I carried on, blissfully unaware. At this point it's after work in the evening and the time is at 3 hours for this glove. I'm starting to get the creeping feeling that this will be a tester glove, as I'm not happy with all the mistakes and I'm making up a new pattern as I go along. At any rate, it's time to go, so I'm taking this glove travelling for the weekend. By the time I got to knit again on the train, it was 11 PM at night and I started making some mistakes, so I stuffed this into my bag and picked it up again at home. Let's look at what I have here and see where it went wrong. Number 1, the cuff is too short. It looks weird and off balance. Number 2, remember those stitches I dropped? Yeah, I picked up every single one backwards, so now I have a line of twisted stitches all around my glove. Number 3 is my cast on method. The pattern I was loosely following said to cast on 3 at the end of this row, but I went with a make 3 method. This left a rather large lump in my glove, which I hate. Mistake number 5, the top of this glove is too short. In the next one, I'll leave a knit row between each decrease row, so it tapers off nicely. And mistake number 6, I purled the thumb. I was so sleepy on that train that I knit on the wrong side of my double pointed needles and I didn't even notice until the next day. This is a disaster. I took my glove to a coffee shop over the weekend and had a look at what worked and what didn't. I wrote up a new pattern to make a better glove during the week. Once I got home, I did the frog of shame to get the yarn ready to become a real glove. Armed with a cup of tea, just enough yarn and a new pattern, I got to work to see if I could make these gloves in one day. I sat over my desk with a timer and knit one up. It took just under 3 hours. I knit the second one off camera as it was uncomfortable to knit hunched over my desk like this, and I'm more of a curl up in a ball person anyway. These gloves took 6 hours to knit in total. They're not the same size, but I honestly don't see anyone wearing these gloves in real life anyway. The question is, could Phyllis have made these over the course of a day in the office? Well, Michael tells her to stop working and only knit the gloves, but he leaves at 4. If the Dunder Mifflin employees work from 9 to 4, this gives her 7 hours to knit them. She's a more experienced knitter than me, so maybe she could have. I put the end of this ball into my scrap bag and made some calculations. We get to subtract 2.2 from the total this week, leaving us with 87 left to go.